Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Autism BC Talks. Today we're talking about autism and self-care for children and teens with Counsellor Colleen Fuller. I'm Katie Bennison, your host, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a parent member of Autism BC, and I've also partnered with Autism BC on a couple of projects. Lights, Camera, Autism, which is a fun broadcast workshop that we've taken into Metro Vancouver high schools to help teens practice their social skills in a supportive environment. And I'm also the host of Life on the Spectrum, the Autism Family podcast. And you can find out all sorts of things about Life on the Spectrum and Lights, Camera, Autism on the Autism BC website or at lifeonthespectrumpodcast.com. And you can check out our latest episode, which is Coping with COVID, and you can compare notes with other parents as they describe their experiences and coping strategies and self-care during the pandemic. And now, speaking of self-care, during COVID, I think that today's Autism BC talk is going to be extremely helpful. Most of us have been staying home since mid-March, and for many of us, it's been very hard to adapt. It's turned our lives upside down, and whatever you've been doing to survive the pandemic, it's important for everyone to take care of ourselves and our kids. And, you know, self-care is essential, obviously, for our well-being, and not only for ourselves as parents, but also for our kids. And today we are very, very lucky to be joined by Registered Counsellor Colleen Fuller, who's going to teach us the importance of self-care and what we can do to help our kids practice self-care. Good morning, Colleen.
Good morning, Katie, and everybody who's out there.
Now, before we get to you, Colleen, we have a couple of housekeeping notes for everyone. First of all, as viewers, if you're joining us on Autism BC, Facebook Live, or Zoom, Colleen's going to speak for about 25 minutes or so. And then at that time, in fact, now, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone so that we can hear Colleen, and we're not going to hear your dogs barking in the background or your phone clucking like a chicken or your kids screaming for snacks. So everyone will be able to hear Colleen. And then once Colleen's finished, we'll open up to questions. And what you can do now is you can type your questions or anytime during the chat into the chat section on Facebook Live or on Zoom. And if you wouldn't mind putting your first name and the city you're from along with your question, and that way you'll hear when we get to your question. And also, if you're on Zoom and you prefer to ask your question directly to Colleen rather than me reading it to her, just indicate that in the chat box. And that's when it's your turn, I will introduce you to Colleen and unmute your mic. So Colleen, before we get to your talk, I just want to give people a little bit of background of who you are. We're, as I said earlier, we're so glad to have you join us. Colleen Fuller has been supporting people with autism spectrum disorder and their families in many ways since the 1990s. First of all, Colleen, you began your career as a childhood educator, and now you're a registered clinical counselor. Colleen has first-hand experience dealing with autism. One of her family members is on the spectrum, and Colleen now works as a counselor in New Westminster and Vancouver, and she's connecting with and encouraging a number of adult clients who experience ASD. And she's facilitated groups and taught seminars about parenting. So basically, Colleen, you know your stuff, and we would really love to hear everything that you're going to talk to us about neurodiverse people, self-care, relationships. And I guess one of the first questions I have for you is, how's your self-care this morning?
I'm a little behind on it, honestly. I was incorrect about what time we were starting today, so I feel like I've been running like mad that's just to keep up. But
I'm sure a lot of people feel exactly the same way. Like we're all like, we're with you, Colleen. That's why, you know, like, yeah.
So just taking a few deep breaths and trying to settle myself. Looking forward to talking with everybody here today.
So why don't you start off by the one thing that intrigued me when I first saw that you were going to be talking about self-care with kids. How do you recognize when self-care is needed for your kids? What are some of the telltale signs?
Wow. Well, sorry about that. I think that it's really important to be tuned into your kids. Above all else, what you're doing in your day, to spend some time paying attention and noticing them. I know we pay attention to them all the time, but we also don't pay attention because we're so busy with our routines and our work and trying to get everything done. So I think it's great to just notice, are they off their normal pattern? Are they more anxious? Are they more resistant? Are they shut down? And I think that that's something that we're going to have to be very conscious of. And I also think that self-care is best done not so much in response to something as just as a regular part of life. So, having it built into life is going to help quite a bit.
So do you
Yeah,
want to take us through that? I know that you prepared a lot of information for us and we're all really eager to hear. So I'm going to
sure.
put the Zoom podium over to you, if you will. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, I'm sure that all of you have been doing self-care for yourselves and for your kids as much as possible throughout this whole thing. You're all familiar with the idea of self-care, and what's usually meant by that is the things we can do to respond to stress in our lives, to restore balance, to comfort ourselves. There's a lot of articles out there that you'll find that'll say that self-care is simple. It's just a matter of taking a bubble bath or, buying the right thing or doing the right thing. And then no matter how stressful life gets, you'll be perfectly fine. They seem to sometimes suggest that if you or your child is feeling stressed, it's kind of your fault for not doing all the right things. But I mean, we're in a situation that is um, objectively very stressful. We've lost our routines, we are under a threat, and everybody is feeling stress. So self-care becomes even more important. But there's something going on in stressful situations that is deeper than just the need to pamper ourselves. And if we can pay attention to that, then our self-care practices will be more effective and more focused. So I'm going to talk a bit about understanding stress and then how to choose good practices, and then I'll offer some practical ideas. So I read recently that there's an unprecedented rise in how frequently we are using the word unprecedented. We are way off the map here, and it's great that the first wave of this situation seems to have come to an end, but we don't know what the post-COVID world is going to look like. We are going to have to adapt to new conditions and notice the effects that that's having on us. So as I talk with people about how they're doing, I hear that stress caused by the virus is having two kind of opposite effects. It is both amplifying and dampening. It's amplifying things that were already happening. So those who are struggling with depression or anxiety are mostly finding that it's becoming harder. And I mean, that just makes sense. The existing concerns about the world are being increased as we get this constant barrage of information, and there are strong conflicts that are developing between people who with different opinions. There's divisions that didn't seem to exist before, and there's practical concerns about financial problems, etc. So it makes sense that people are feeling some stress. Then and that it amplifies the depression or anxiety or just concerns that were happening before. And many people on the spectrum also struggle daily with anxiety or depression. And a lot of people feel safer and more comfortable with routine and predictability It's very difficult to provide that stability now. If you've been dealing with amplified emotions in your home, then that's pretty noticeable. Conflict levels also seem to be amplified. The opposite side of this problem can be less obvious, and that is the situation having a dampening effect. So some people feel less energetic, less productive, more easily fatigued. They just want to curl up in a ball and wait for this to be over. They criticize themselves for being lazy while everybody else is out there learning to bake bread or something. They just want to shut down. And this, I think, is all based in the same basic survival system. Our brains are able to very quickly change when we feel under threat. It's known as the alert response or fight, flight, freeze. I always have trouble with that tongue twister. Fight, flight, freeze. It's hardwired into the brain. When we detect a threat, our nervous system automatically changes, instantly preparing us to survive by fighting back or running away or making ourselves invisible by freezing. Unfortunately, viruses are not really impacted by us attacking them or by retreating. So in this situation, freezing may be one of our best options. It definitely makes staying in quarantine feel right. So we are having frequent, mild alert responses over and over and over again, and it impacts how we are able to interact with the world. We don't really have conscious control of whether we go into the alert response. It happens at a deeper level of the brain, pre-conscious. The best we can do is to recognize what's happening and to work with it. So if your child or young person is melting down more often, or is panicky or resistant, or is extra sluggish, those are signs that they might need some help getting out of their alert state. It's the same person might have all of those types of responses in one day, but maybe they specialize in one. Parents have the same things going on too. You may feel like you want to fight or flee or freeze or do all of those things one after another. When the danger we sense is specific and time limited, these responses can be really helpful. But when it's a long-term problem, goes on and on and on, it's hard on the body and the mind to be in the alert state constantly or many times a day. So it's really important to learn how to calm our nervous systems. The first thing I want to say about this, though, is if you feel that anyone is in your family is in danger because of mental health issues that are out of control. What I mean by that is, are they weeping? Are they, spending hours a day in a very, very dark state that it's difficult to get them out of? Are they, combative, violent, irrational, difficult to manage, and these are new things that you're not used to having to deal with, then please call for help. Don't try and deal with it completely on your own. Many agencies have special funding right now to provide no-cost mental health care in response to this crisis. You can find out by speaking with your family doctor or the 211 line. The BC Association of Clinical Counsellors has a number of counselors who have agreed to do extra counseling at no cost or low cost. So I really encourage you to look into those resources if things are feeling out of control in your home. But if it's not that serious, one of the best ways to deal with this is through increased self-care. There are things we can do to settle our nervous systems so that we can stay grounded and settled even when things are bad. None of these things are going to work perfectly in a crisis. None of them change our brains so that we don't have fight or flight responses. I mean, we need those. They're very important. It's just when it shows up, needs to be under control. Sorry. So part of the reason I'm explaining this to you is that, sorry, I've found that with my clients, education can be really, really helpful, and also with my own kids. I think discussing the fight, flight, freeze situation with kids and youth can be very helpful. Sometimes I draw a story with kids when we're talking about it. I'll, draw it out. Say you're walking down the path and a bear jumps out. What should you do? What else can you do? And how, it's possible to have the right responses in that kind of a dangerous situation will just happen because it's hardwired. But then we talk about, what if, and how there's a special part of the brain that notices threats and is able to change the way that you're reacting to things so that you'll be able to be stronger, be faster. And that's fantastic. But what if what jumps out at you is not a bear? What if what jumps out at you is a math test or a uncomfortable social situation or, an invisible virus? What could you do? What would work? Sometimes our instincts aren't that helpful. Many people on the spectrum really thrive on science and facts. So even little people on the spectrum, lots of people do benefit from getting a lot of information. I just want to say there are two different kinds of copers. There are informational copers and there are avoidance copers. And informational copers really need to know all the facts. They want to know exactly how many cases there are today and where they are and all of that. And the avoidance copers would really rather not know any of that stuff, would rather just act like everything's normal and let's have a picnic. And, and you're the one who knows what works best for your child or young adult or young person. You're the person who is the expert in how to settle your own child. So I just wanted to tell you that although I'm suggesting education, that works better for some people than for others. Anyway, if you are working with a young adult or a young teenager about this, you can discuss the idea of the fight, flight, freeze, the alert response, maybe do a little bit of research together about it. Dan Levine has written some interesting books. There's a fantastic theory called polyvagal theory that's incredibly complex, but so interesting and gives you so much power over how things work in your own system. So after we've learned more about what's going on, it would be great if there was a way to reprogram our brains into using Hi. Okay, I'm back. There's no way to completely override our instincts. And if we try too hard to push down the alert response while it's happening, we just make it more powerful. Saying calm down just about always fails because it's trying to repress something that's trying to save our lives. So when it's in full swing, the best way to stop this response from taking over is to kind of trick our bodies into thinking that they've done the thing that needed to be done. So if we're feeling like we need to fight or run, doing some exercise, running around the room, running up and down the stairs, doing some vigorous play, or just having something heavy to lift and carry. It all communicates to the brain that you've done the thing, you beat the bear, everything's good. I know a lot of people work by trying to do deep breathing and that kind of exercises at that time. If that works for you, fantastic, but don't be surprised if it doesn't work. And if it doesn't, then definitely try the more active approach, because many people really enjoy and appreciate that.
Colleen?
Yes.
A few of our viewers are asking if you could provide the resource that you just mentioned, and then we can type it on Facebook and Zoom.
Absolutely.
If you could just say it again.
Which resource? About Dan Levine's Whole Brain Child is one. And then the theory is called polyvagal theory, Polyvagal. Is that?
You were frozen on my end. It was probably just my computer, but just in case, do you mind saying it one more time?
Sure, no problem. So the book that I recommend is by Dan Levine, and it is Daniel Levine, and it's called The Whole Brain Child. And then the theory is polyvagal theory, Polyvagal.
So not bagel, like with cream cheese. No.
Not bagel, vagal. Yeah. It's actually focused on how the vagus nerve, which runs through kind of the whole body, has this tremendous power to change the way that our bodies work when we're under stress, and how having that activated a lot or for a long time has a real impact on how we experience life, and then about what settles that nerve. Okay. It's kind of, yeah, it's fascinating, and there's whole books and conferences. I went to a 3-day conference on it. So there's a lot to learn, and I'm not going to try and summarize.
I hope they served bagels while they were talking for 3 days. That's a lot. But go back to it.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you. So, but we also can reprogram our brains. And that is, there's a couple of things we can do. We can do it from a couple of different levels. On one level, we can talk to ourselves about we call these grounding techniques. This is when you decide, interesting, I've just lost connection. But grounding techniques are when we decide that we are currently not in danger, and we're going to focus on what we can feel, what we can hear, what we can see, smell, touch, taste, and the people who are with us now who are safe. So that's step one, is to use grounding techniques where we use touch or awareness of the senses to bring us to this current moment instead of to a possible future when we are at risk. And then the other thing to do is to use appropriate self-care techniques. And I'm just gonna, I need to, I've lost my notes because they disappeared off my page. Just 1 second here.
Oh no, I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I know. Just 1 second. Okay, I've got them again. So, yeah, so it's very individual, figuring out the best way to do, to find these self-care techniques. And now I'm scrolling down through my notes because they're back, but they're not at the right page. Sorry, guys.
Well, here,
Okay.
Colleen, what is sort of the next point that you wanted to discuss with us? And I can just
Yeah.
ask you a few
Well,
questions.
what I wanted to talk about is how instead of going with our instinctive responses, we can go with consciously chosen strategies. And I'm going to call those strategies, these consciously chosen strategies to settle our system, that's what I'm going to call self-care. It's a bit
So
of a
almost
different
like
definition.
pre-planned.
Sorry?
So they're almost pre-planned.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because at the moment that the fight or flight response is kicking off, we don't have a lot of choices. We can do what is pre-programmed. So if you
Your
have
amygdala is sort of frozen and you're just in that paralyzed state. So yes.
exactly, and if we have pre-programmed certain things that we're going to do, a safe place we like to go to, or a person that we feel comfortable holding their hand, or a few simple words that we can say to ourselves, like, I'm okay now, I'm okay now, I'm okay now, I'm okay now. To just have a very brief thing, because when we're in that state, it's almost like our brains have converted back to the dinosaur brains that that the human brain is sort of built on top of. And we've got that dinosaur brain, and dinosaurs are not very good at figuring out solutions or talking things through with people. They have very limited vocabularies, and it's good to have a very simple pre-planned approach that you're going to do. So I'm talking about things you can build in for two reasons. One, to generally lower your background stress so that you are less likely to be kicked all the way into fight or flight, but also so that you have these things that are just part of you and you can use them even when you are stressed.
It's like a self-regulation when you notice that,
Exactly.
the zones of regulation with the colors, just sort of when
Right.
you notice that you're leaving the green zone going into the yellow, pull these out. Is that what you're
Yes.
suggesting? Yeah.
Exactly. Because I think that a lot of families who are on the spectrum or have people who experience autism have more training and knowledge and experience with this than other families do. Because, if you spoke to a lot of families, they wouldn't know anything about self-regulation or the zones of regulation or any of that stuff. So I think it's great that these resources are well known in this community, and that yeah. So using those is fantastic at moments like this.
So here's a question, and it might be something that you can speak to that other families might be thinking as well. So when you're in that, that frozen moment, or you feel
Yeah,
like that's where things are going, and you're saying, have these things pre-planned, where do you suggest, like, do you have them in your purse? Because that's what I always find, like, I'm just about to get in the moment and I've gone blank and I'm thinking, like, what do I do here to, like, help my kids or help myself? So do you have any tips of, like, where to put them so you can, like,
well, I mean, right now we're all at home.
yeah.
So that kind of a thing could actually be posted up on a kitchen cabinet or stuck by the door, or, like, we have more privacy to
Mm-hmm.
deal with that kind of thing now. But sure, when you're out in the world, maybe a card in a wallet or a school bag would be a great place to put things like that, so that there's the reminder of what am I going to do if I get overwhelmed.
And I
Yeah,
guess eventually, once you teach your kids that, what do you think of the idea of them having a little card that's laminated or something in their backpack so they can help their
absolutely.
self-care and self-reg too?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great idea.
So have you found your notes yet? Has the
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
stop talking. I'll get back to things. All right.
Okay, cool. Um, I think I just want to talk about your priorities in deciding which strategies to choose. So, first of all, whatever you're doing with your child, your first priority after their safety, after everybody's safety, has to be maintaining and building the relationship. The relationship is just paramount. anything else can be dealt with if you have a strong, positive relationship. For instance, if teaching the academic subjects you've been assigned is causing a war in your house, I would say disappoint the teacher and be on your child's side. That might be hard for you to see as being safe, but remember that one way or another, this time is not going to last forever. After it's over, what you really need is a great connection with your children. If you come out of this closer as a family and way behind in social studies, you'll have the ability to work together to catch up. And you know, there are some things like motor skills practice or physio that are going to need to continue. But a lot of things can be put aside right now without doing any harm to your child or teen's future. And I really encourage you to think that through. After maintaining the relationship, the next priority is looking after yourself. Your calm and mental health are vitally important to your child's experience of all this. Are you on high alert? Do you have practices that help you? Maybe you need a card for you of the practices that help you. And can you do those things together with your child? I know parents who do, circulate breathing together, or yoga together, or or maybe you need time off, time away from your child. Even a few minutes of solitude can help to reset your system, clear your head, help you find the happy. And then secondly, be guided by your child's needs and by your own capacity. You know how much they understand of what's going on, and whether they need mostly physical calming exercises or a chance to talk things through and process, or distraction. And remember that you have a limited amount of energy and creativity and strength. So if you take on a quote unquote self-care practice that leaves you cranky and exhausted, it won't help anyone. It's essential to edit things out. Jill Briscoe said there's an art of leaving things undone so that the greater thing can be done. And loving our kids and building relationships with them is the greater thing. How we do that greater thing differs from one parent to the next, but leaving some things undone, I think a lot of families with people on the spectrum have had to become quite good at this. We stopped trying to keep up appearances that everything's perfect in our world a long time ago. But let me encourage you right now to only do the things that matter most to your inner circle. Gourmet food's not necessary. Crackers and cheese and fruit is a meal. The house has to be clean enough to be safe, but you can make your own decisions about whether it's okay to leave the Lego all over the dining table. If there was ever a time to let go of outside expectations, this is it. And maybe this is the time to let your child or teen become self-paced in learning. Instead of being the kind of teacher or jailer who's forcing them to learn what the curriculum says, maybe you could try being their co-explorer, learning what they find interesting. A lot of our kids have very specific interests, and they may never have had somebody who had enough time to listen and hear and learn with them all of the things that they really find fascinating. And this could be your opportunity to join with them in their world. It's really hard to push back to all the voices that say that you must personally lift your child up on a scaffold that you have made so that you and they will be good enough. I just want to say that that is nonsense. You are already good enough. They are already good enough. This time might let you just back down from the pressure and to discover how well they're really doing. Cutting out things that are stressful and people who are stressful, reducing your intake of negative things on the internet. Nobody ever improved their mental health or happiness by paying attention to arguments on the internet. I think it's really important that we try to control our media diet. I just let that go. So adding things in, absolute basics: eat, sleep, exercise. These are the practices that have to come first. Trying to maintain decent nutrition, making sure everybody's getting B vitamins, oils, vitamin D. Those are the things that support nervous system health. If sleep's a problem, read up on sleep hygiene suggestions, commit to regular bedtimes, to no screens in bedrooms, and to bedtime routines. If it's hard to go to sleep, don't lie there trying to have an empty mind. Instead, give yourself a story to think about or give your child a story to think about of a calm activity. Imagine that we're going to the beach together. Think about, what do you want to take to the beach, and how are we going to get there, and what are we going to see, and try to walk through the whole activity just moment by moment. It helps to give the brain something unchallenging to work on so that we don't go to thinking about anxieties. Getting enough exercise is really important. Don't skip those walks. Fresh air helps. Online workouts. Try and go into it with play and enjoyment. So many people have been posting awesome play ideas for inside the house. But then beyond the basics, okay. These are the practices that I really wanted to get to just say these are the practical things you can do. First of all, touch. One of the most common things for the nervous system is touch. If your child will allow it, make hugs a regular part of your days. When you're not saying hello and goodbye every day, it's easy to lose the hug routine. But if you can get it back in, 4 hugs a day, that's the minimum, as the old song says. If they won't allow you to hug them, you might have to be more creative. Are they okay with having their hair brushed or having a foot massage? How about, a gymnastics routine where the child's climbing up you, or will they sit next to you on the couch and lean in while you're watching something together? If touch is too hard, there's substitutes. You could wrap up in a cloth or a blanket, get in under the couch cushions, press themselves behind a door. I'm going to show you one of my favorite practices and encourage you to try this with me. It gives you the benefits of touch without someone else touching you. So it goes like this. You put your hand on your heart, so on the left-hand side of your chest, and you put the other hand on top of it and press. And while you're pressing like that, you breathe slowly in, and you try to imagine the breath going right into your heart. So it's like this. When a person is feeling upset, you can add to this and have them pat their hand and say, "It's okay. You're going to be okay. It's okay." And even if they're saying it to themselves, somehow it communicates. When you're touching your own heart, it really makes a difference. There's something that probably a lot of you are familiar with from Brain Gym, which is a great thing to be doing right now as a great self-care. But you lock your hands together, put them on your chest. Think about positive thought, a positive memory, something that's very comforting, and tap back and forth. And again, with gentle breathing. So that's a very specific, very simple technique that you can teach to very young kids all the way up to teenagers. They might not be willing to do it in front of you, but they might be willing to do it on their own. Okay, so that touch, time in, spending time in the same space together. We often sort of block each other out, but this is scheduling a time to be in to be truly connected. So a tea and talk time, a family game, listening to a book or a podcast together, talking about it, telling stories from family history, telling stories generally, because stories are very comforting in times of stress. And some of those, even old fairy tales that deal with danger, Red Riding Hood or whatever, can be really great for dealing with stress. We've spent hours as a family in the past drawing huge, complicated worlds on big sheets of paper, chalking up the sidewalk, working on a gratitude journal. Gratitude as a practice is amazing, how it changes things. I'll give you a link. I'll send it out later about that. Anything that you do while paying attention to each other really helps. And then time out too. We need time apart. Even quite young kids can spend a bit of time in a safe room on their own. Solitude settles the mind. And I think it's really important to have some time out. Little kids love forts, even if it's a sheet thrown over a table, a little private place for them to go and have some solitude. And also parents need some solitude somehow. And if that means that you have to be creative, finding ways to get somebody else to supervise your kids for a few minutes, I really recommend that. Or after they've gone to bed, taking time without distractions, like instead of retreating into your phone or the news or whatever, to just take a few minutes to be is really important. Yeah. And then reflective practices. That solitude's even better when you combine it with a reflective practice like journaling, writing, mindfulness, mindful activities, spiritual practices like prayer, meditation. If you've struggled with meditation, keep it very short and simple. I encourage 1-minute meditation. There's a video on YouTube called Meditation in a Moment. And I strongly recommend that you watch it. It's fantastic. Meditation in a Moment is the name of the video. And it'll teach you how to do meditation in 1 minute that makes a difference. And then fun and play. We all need to laugh right now. Laughter reduces tension and it connects us. Every family has their own sense of humor, their own idea of what's fun. Whatever's fun for you, indulge. Maybe it's watching Shrek for the 50th time, or playing Clue, or tickle fights, or y'all need your daily dose of laughter. And sometimes you can find new fun things by letting your kids be your guide. Teens can introduce their parents to funny things online. Mine introduced me to the Vlog Brothers and to watching anime. If you don't know who the Vlog Brothers are, they're great. Hank and John Green. Parents can offer games or shows or activities from their past, and kids can be all kinds of creative with new games. And it's so fascinating to enter into your child's mind and let them be in charge of this playtime. The last thing on my list, the first on a lot of lists you'll find online, is pampering. If it makes you happy, by all means, have that bubble bath or do your nails or eat some chocolate or have a glass of, whatever age appropriate beverage makes you feel good. We in our house have been making it a practice to order takeout to celebrate the weekends, kind of so we remember that weekends are a thing. Spoiling yourself or spoiling each other is a well-deserved reward for being so patient and cooperative during this time. Been talking for a long time here, said a lot. A lot of it was learned by listening to families, and I hope that it'll be helpful to yours. I'd like to know what you're thinking, what questions you have for me. What have I missed?
I think that's what I've been asking behind the scenes to our hosts at Autism BC, and so far we don't have any questions. And so thank you so much.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sure they're going to start to come in. Please, if you have questions, now is the time to enter them. We'd love if you could put your first name and what city you're from, so that you know that we're answering your question. If you would, if you're with us on Zoom and you'd prefer to ask your question directly to Colleen, just indicate that in the chat, and then I will unmute your mic. But Colleen, I think that this is such an important topic: self-care for our kids, self-care for us as parents, because as you've been mentioning, it is a very stressful time. And the one question that I have for you, that's something that you mentioned earlier, actually, I'll hold that thought because Gloria has a question for us. Now, Gloria, are you going to, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question directly. Good morning, Gloria.
Hello.
So where, first of all, which city are you from?
Very valuable information, very timely as well. The question, I'll just keep mine short because I don't know if more's coming. My question is, what I noticed during this pandemic is my 10-year-old have night terrors twice in 2 weeks, very short. And he never had that before. He did have nightmares, but he never had night terrors. What I read online is that it should be fine, but I just wanted to hear, is there anything I need to do? We try to make sure there's nothing that would scare him because he's quite sensitive, but night terrors is something that was a bit scary for us as parents, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you're having to go through this. Night terrors is a very uncomfortable thing to have to deal with. And unfortunately, it's pretty common and it's pretty difficult to avoid. If you are going to be a person who has a very creative mind and lots of imagination, you are likely to be a person who has more bad dreams and more night terrors. Sometimes night terrors are actually triggered by something in the environment, like if there is a dog barking suddenly in that the child hears in their sleep or something like that. Sometimes there is actually a trigger that you might notice, but on the whole, I think that if you are spending time doing your bedtime routine and helping him to go to bed feeling as calm as possible, then 2 night terrors in 2 weeks is not, that's what you said, right? Yeah. It's not terribly uncommon for a 10-year-old. And I would say if this becomes a more frequent problem, then you would want to look into, talking with a counselor or somebody to find out more about what to do about it. But for this time, I would say to just spend more time on calm bedtime routine. And if they do wake up in that state, remember that they are already in fight or flight. Like what happens in a night terror is that you wake up already in fight or flight. And so trying to talk people out of it is not going to help. Trying to, again, we need to do the body calming things of touch and attention and comforting, and not to worry about like talking through what happened in the dream might not actually be helpful because they might not even have words for it. It may be a wordless fear.
And it might extend the sort of the trauma from it all.
Exactly. So what we really want to do is just calm their bodies and be there with them.
Thanks, Colleen. And Gloria, I wanted to mention actually, we have on Saturday, the 30th of May, this will totally interest you. We have another special Facebook event like this. It's called Autism and Sleep. And we're going to be featuring behavior analyst Hillary McClinton of Coastal Ridge Behavior and Sleep Solutions, Saturday, May 30th, 10 a.m. to noon. So I hope that you can join us for that. Thanks, Gloria. Do we have any other? Sorry, did you want to say something else, Gloria?
No, I just want to say thank you. Perfect.
Okay, you can go and take a nap now. Put yourself on mute. Oh, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Colleen as we make our way? This hour has just flown right by. If no one else has a question at this point, I do have a question that might be relevant to other people. You've given some very good self-care advice for kids that are younger, like you were talking about that earlier. Can you give some examples of self-care that parents can do with tweens or teenagers and young adults?
Yeah, I think so the background story with kids who are transitioning from no longer being kids is that our parenting needs to transition too.
Yes.
Right. We're going from being responsible for everything about them to becoming just a consultant in their life.
A little bit more hands off.
Yeah. And so a lot, I think, of what we can do with kids who are no longer kids, with tweens and teens, is to provide opportunities, ideas, options. I have a friend who calls this deer parenting, because if you want to feed wild deer, you have to go up and put the thing out there and then back away from it as quickly as you can and leave it there for the deer to either take or not take if they want. And it's very much the same as tweens, teens, older, that we want to offer ideas but not push them. So I think that just about anything that works for an adult for calming themselves can be modified a little bit and offered to a younger, person who is tweens and up. So a lot of the same practices like journaling and it's difficult to get touch in, but attention, contacts, like social contact, is incredibly important. So especially for teens, like making sure that they are staying in contact with healthy people. If they won't talk to you, sorry?
That are their age?
That are their age or that are adults that they feel comfortable with. Like there comes a time often where our young people are not as comfortable talking to their parents, but if they have a safe aunt or uncle or somebody that they feel, really comfortable to talk with, it's fantastic to try and maintain that connection, even though we're all on lockdown, because they might be able to talk about things more with them. So social contact, touch, the same kinds of physical practices like exercise and breathing practices, all of those things can be used.
Okay. Colleen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've just heard from Jacqueline Crummy in Vancouver, and she says, could you please have Colleen do more of these sessions? So, and I speak for Jacqueline as well, and everybody from Autism BC. This has been incredibly helpful. We thank you so much for your time. For other people that are listening, if they want to reach you, Colleen, if you have a website or an email that you'd like to share.
I do. I I have a website that's creativesolutionscounseling.com.
Great.
And also, I can be reached.
Well, you know what? We'll put the stuff up. We will put it up here.
That's the easiest way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you all for listening.
I have a couple of quick housekeeping notes for our members. You can visit autismbc.ca or visit Autism BC's Facebook page video for other events. Next Friday, May 22nd, please sign up for the Parent Coffee Meetup. You can email Stella at shui@autismbc.ca if you'd like to participate in that. And also, there's going to be an art class on May 26th from 7 to 8 p.m. with artist Ellen Yang. You can sign in for that on the Facebook events page and follow live online. There are lots of pre-recorded, very helpful videos. If you just go on the Facebook page under videos, you'll see that. And also, everybody's so busy. If you tuned in late to Colleen and you want to see this entire thing, I can see Jacqueline's nodding her head. Just go to the Facebook Live page, click on the video, and it's all there for you. So once again, thanks again so much for joining us. I hope this helps in your self-care, and stay safe. I'm Katie Bennison, and please check out the Coping with COVID episode of Life on the Spectrum podcast, because that will help with your self-care as well. You'll hear other tips from other parents. Stay safe and be well.